7.4 JavaScript events, the load event. So sometimes you have to wait for your entire screen to load, and you might be clicking on an item and it may not work. And that's because sometimes the HTML, the whole thing hasn't been loaded. So, and it needs to be loaded in order to load the JavaScript file. So a lot of times what happens is everything in your JavaScript file is encapsulated in this function load listener, and it will not load until the index HTML has finished loading up the body index. So until the body index has been loaded, you don't want JS, you don't want any other interaction. So sometimes when, especially with slow connections, sometimes even with high-speed internet, sometimes it loads slowly. So you don't want to be clicking buttons and not having the event listener loaded up yet. So the way you do that is you add this function, load listener, and your JavaScript only goes in here. And now let's read the instructions. It's very good practice to wait for the browser to finish loading the page before starting the flow of your website application. To do so, we use the load event. So please create a function called load listener that listens to the load event and alerts the string load finished when it's called. It alerts it. So somehow we're going to have to say alert. And what are we going to say? Loading finished. Okay, but how are we going to know? There has to be some kind of listener that's attached to. So it says the listener has to be assigned to the body, and then it tells you how to do that. So on the body, it has to be just like there's something called onClick. And we can say, what's the name of our function? Load listener, Control C, Control V, onClick load listener. So if I click it, I want this to run. So if I run it, I click my body. Oh, do I need this? I think so. Run. Oh, it's not working. I wonder why. Anyway, I don't even want, I thought I'd be able to teach you something proper. Alert, finished loading, function load listener. This should have worked. Anyway, I don't want it to be when the body's on clicks. There's something called a load listener. It's called an onload event. So over here, onload my function, open and close brackets. Oops. So right here, onload, call this my function. So let's try that. Instead of on click, it should have worked. I'm very surprised actually. Load listener. Okay, well, I'll just do the onload function. On load, and it was called load listener. Control C. Load listener. Now if I run my code, loading finished. So as soon as it loaded, it said loading finished. And as soon as we did that, we were able to click on the page. Everything else will run. So you're making sure that everything, the whole body, the whole visual is there before we start listening to any click events. And that's basically how 7.4 is done. Submit. Done.